After reading chapter 6 of the Michi text, the author discusses the idea of teaching students media literacy in the early 1990s. Michi makes a compelling argument for the need to teach beyond the basics, but simultaneously quotes Lisa Delpit and her call to emphasize the basics when instructing Latino or African American students. How important is it to teach the basics in such a test-driven educational environment, and how important is it for students to learn beyond the basics? Please keep Shepherd and the Kensington neighborhood in the front of your minds as you discuss this.
Okay. I think it's obviously crucial that we do teach the basics. Like, even if you hate to say it, like, we kind of have to teach to the test. You have to prepare these kids for this test so that they do well on it. But I don't think that the basics is all that should be taught. And especially, like, in a school like this where, you know, the kids don't get to go on like these field trips to Washington D.C. or stuff that we might have gotten to do when we were little. Like, it's important to go beyond the basics in the classroom to teach them about those things because they don't get to see it in their everyday lives.
I think it also has to do a lot with grades. Like, maybe in younger grades, you want to give them a foundation. You have to start them out somewhere. And then as they build that, you know, their language and their reading and math skills, then start to introduce things more. But I think it happens in everyday classrooms. Like, you always go beyond the basics. It's not always just reading, math, science. You're always talking about different things here and there, whether it be, you know, using a pizza or like how to make an apple pie. Like, you're going beyond the basics all the time, I feel like, even when you don't think that you actually are.
Yeah,
that's what I was thinking too. Like, you can be teaching the basics, but there's always times you're going to go beyond the basics and teach more. Like, even if you only talk like 5-10 minutes more about something else, it has to do with what you're learning, but it's like a more like with their culture or something we were talking about last week. Like,
yeah, you can use the base. You could use the beyond with the basics. Like, you can use reading, but reading like something about their
like,
culture.
What you said, like the pizza thing. Like, if you were doing math, and you were teaching fractions, like that's something basic that you have to teach. But like, use pizza as the fractions, and then have the lesson on like the Italian culture making this pizza and how to make the pizza. You know, so it's still like you're still teaching the basics, what you need to teach according to the district, but it's like you can make it more fun and go beyond the basics, but they're still learning.
Yeah, and like you said, like if you're reading something, if you're doing something for reading, like pick something that has to do with science or social studies, so they're learning that extra stuff that they're not always teaching that's going to be on the test, but they're still reading.
Right.
So I think that's good. A good way to incorporate like more like different things into your lessons.
That's true. Just like crossing all the subjects with one another, like something that you taught, like if you did that in math and then you were talking about pizza, have them write about it. And so, you know, they're still practicing the writing, but it's beyond just saying like, my name is blah, blah,
like
blah.
in my class, I've used Sid the Science Kid a lot, and that's a TV show. So like, you know, you can teach them about media and about technology and, you know, use different things in your classroom, but you're also teaching them about science right then and there.
And I think especially like in this day and age, it's important, like the media and the technology that you talked about. It's going to be a part of their lives no matter what when they grow up, even though there's not a computer section of the PSSA or any of these standardized tests. It's something that's a skill that we just have to accept that our students are going to have to know, even if it's not what they're being tested on.
And even like how the media, like the chapter talked about, like everything they do, like I'm sure when they go home they spend more time watching TV than they do anything else.
So use that. You know.
If you can incorporate that into the classroom to teach the basics, they're going to be more interested in what you're talking about anyways, if it's something that they can relate to.
How important is it to teach basics? How important is it to teach beyond the basics? I mean, I think you need to start somewhere, so the basics is where you need to start. I think it's easier to start with the basics, getting a foundation, get the kids going, but
and obviously the basics, like the students need to know the basics. They need to know how to add and subtract and multiply and divide
to be able
and read
to
and write,
you know, to keep going in order to learn these other things beyond.
But eventually, like, they learn the basics, and then you're not just gonna you're not just going to keep a student at a basic level forever.
Yeah.
When if they're ready to move on, then you take them beyond the basics and you take them even further than like what the test is asking you about.
If you had to incorporate the neighborhood, how would you?
I mean, I think like we've talked about before, especially in a school like this, like the culture's so strong. And so there's tons of stuff you could do in any neighborhood, but especially a neighborhood like this where the kids know about their culture and
a
are
lot
proud
them
of
are
it. And
the same.
yeah.
Like it's not like a really
Real
diverse,
strong
mixed school. Yeah.
And just like stuff like that, like in math, we're doing word problems right now, and I'll like use the kids' names and talk about stuff like that they've told, you know what I mean? Like make a story that they've told me into a math story. So it's like, yeah, they're learning how to complete these math stories and add and subtract, but it's like taking
Getting
it
their
beyond the basic
attention.
of just saying like, okay, I had 8 and I took away 5. What does that equal? You know, making it into a story that has something to do with them. Like, I think when you take it beyond the basic, it's beneficial to you because the kids are going to be paying way more attention.
It's more meaningful for them too.
They can relate to it more and they want to listen to it.
Yeah, relating it is like a really big deal. I think it's really important in the classroom. Like if they can sit there and relate to something as opposed to some, made up story that they have no idea or have never heard of something or never seen any of that before. But if you put them to it, I think it really hits home and they connect to it, which makes them want to learn more about it.
Right.
Let's see.
Yeah, so I mean, I think basically just you have to put like the basic foundation in your classroom first, but once you as a teacher like know that your kids know the basics and have that foundation, then I think that it's like really important to move beyond the basics.
Yeah.
I mean, if your students are really affected, like if you see their testing and they're really not doing that well, I mean, I wouldn't say like take away all of it, but like put more basics in, use the other things, this type of like rewards or like, not prizes, but throw that in there.
Incentive.
Yeah. Give them something to look forward to or, but I think if it's affecting your testing, then it may be a problem. If it's too much, like if you're really throwing too much of beyond in there.
Yeah.
But usually you wouldn't even do beyond if they don't understand the basics
Right.
first.
So yeah, basically what it comes down to is
Your foundation.
It's the foundation that you lay and the basics that you teach right from the beginning. And then, it might take your class 3 months to get the basics, and it might take my class 1 month, and it might take your class 2 weeks. But once they have that basic foundation, then like we always say, you use your best judgment and you feel out how much more beyond the basics and how much fun and exciting stuff you can throw in to your kids.
Yeah.